Hello and welcome to episode 75 of the Retrotopia podcast. This is Sam this week with the intro and the entire episode. This is a special episode. We have been doing a series of solo episodes to kind of help with our schedules, and it's my turn. And my game is Beloved Rapture, which was released just last year, so it's not quite retro at all, but it is retro-inspired. So I actually played and guested on the Still Loading podcast with Josh over there. And I want to thank Josh and also Chris Copeland from the Retro Hangover podcast for giving me a review code for the game. And I was able to join Josh over at Still Loading a few months back. I think that episode is released over on the Still Loading feed. So give that episode a try if you are interested in this game and what I have to say here. Josh and I go into much more detail. It's much easier to talk about one of these games with a pal. So there's a bit more back and forth on that episode, but I give some, I believe, concise opinions on this one. I don't really remember because it was a while ago, and as soon as I say something, I usually forget. But again, Beloved Rapture was released last year, 2024, developed by Rapture Studio and Two Left Thumbs. It's on PC, so it's a Steam game right now, is probably the easiest way to play it, and you can get it on Good Old Games or GOG, as I like to call it. Those are the ways that you can play it right now. But before we get too far, let's just quick get some plugs out of the way. You can find all of our links to the socials and the Discord and everything over at Linktree. That's linktr.ee/Retrotopia. So join our Patreon. Our Patreon is free. And join our Discord. Our Discord is also free. And then there's also a paid tier for Patreon, which I believe is $3 and gives you early access to some content and some bonus stuff. So it's a great value, and we're looking to add some more soon. So if you're new, welcome to the show. If you're here just for Beloved Rapture chat, this shouldn't be too long of an intro. It's just me, and there's a couple of questions and comments, so we'll get to those. Skip ahead maybe 5 or 10 minutes, but I think it's a good time to stick around for questions and comments because we got some cool ones this week. So I would encourage you to stay. All right, let's welcome our newest patron, Dylan. Can I call you D-Man? D-Money? D-Man. That's cool. It's like a defenseman for a hockey team. What kind of defenseman would you be, Dylan? Would you be like a stay-at-home defenseman or a puck-moving defenseman who joins the rush sometimes? I don't know. I'm gonna say you're a puck mover. That sounds awesome. So welcome, Dylan. And that'd be hilarious if you were actually a hockey player and a defenseman. Who knows? Like maybe you played in high school, you played beer league or something. But welcome, Dylan. It's good to have you. And what else? Well, I thanked Chris and Josh up front. So yeah, I'll thank them again. I think I thanked them profusely in the main episode too, if I can remember correctly. I'm absolutely honored and humbled that they would consider me to join them and gave me the opportunity to play this game because it's really cool playing a review copy. I've never done that before. And the developer, Rapture Studio, has been pretty generous with their feedback and stuff. It sounds like from my discussion with Josh, you should check that out over at Still Loading again. They have a Discord and they're pretty interactive with their community of players and stuff. And that's just pretty cool. If you've been listening with any regularity and you listened to our Legend of Santa episode, that was another one where the game developer was pretty interactive with us and thought it was cool that we did an episode on their game. So that's always fun. A lot of cool like retro inspired indie games out there, and it's kind of neat to. It's a really good like wholesome community of people. So I don't know. It's been a cool experience. Anyways, let's get into the 9-bit banter box, which is culturally elegant, and it makes sense, damn it. Our first question comes from Callan, who says, if you could play any video game for the first time, what would it be and why? Well, I would say my answer to this is usually Pokemon, but there's a huge caveat, because I would have to replicate the feeling of playing it for the first time as a kid, which was, I mean, like, just brand new open world to explore with all these different Pokemon that I didn't know yet, and so much, just different variety and things you could explore. I don't think I could capture that feeling if I played it for like, let's throw the hypothetical that I never played it as a kid and I'm playing it for the first time today, which does happen for a lot of retro games that I didn't get to play back then. Yeah, I don't think that I would be able to replicate it that way. Like, if I could just erase my memory of Pokemon and play it again, I don't think I'd have the same experience. I know I wouldn't have the same experience. So I would want that experience again. So I would probably have to go back to being 11 or whatever. And then the other one I thought of was like any Zelda game. I love solving puzzles and in the dungeons and stuff, and if there's a few Zelda games that I've played a few times over and over again, and I don't really have to think about it anymore. Like Ocarina of Time is the big one where I could just kind of beat that without really thinking about it or looking anything up, or getting stumped, except for maybe the water temple. But luckily there's a few Zeldas I've never had the chance to play, so I'll get that experience again if I play like Oracle of Ages or Seasons, for example, and then like Spirit Tracks and some of the DS ones that I've got but I haven't had a chance to play yet. I'm looking forward to getting into those. So yeah, those would be my answers. We've been playing more horror games lately here, so I think like obviously like Silent Hill 2 remake, but I guess playing a horror game again would be a cool experience, because once you've gotten kind of the hang of the scares or the creepy stuff that happens in a horror game, you probably get used to it. So that's probably one that would be awesome to like erase and relive. But anyways, thanks for the question. That's a great question. Next question comes from Mr. Hooley. This is a good one too. He says, Sam, yes, you just want a brand new time machine. Where is the first time location you are going to, or time/location? Shoot, I lost on a location. P.S. There's a 50% chance you can't get back. Keep that in mind. Damn. I would say I'm so risk averse, and I think that history is generally fucking terrifying and gruesome, and I wouldn't want to go back to it. Like, can you imagine like what the 1800s or 1700s must have smelled like? Ugh. I mean, to smell better, we were making perfume using like whale crud, like ambergris, but it was just like floral scents, but with like whale goop mixed in so that it would last longer, and you just spray that over yourself so you didn't smell like BO and shit all the time. And like streets were just like caked in mud and flowing piss and shit. So no, I don't think I would go that far back. Especially with your stipulation that there's a 50% chance that I'm not getting back, I am not taking that risk. I'm only going to go as far back as maybe the 70s or the 80s, and I think I'll probably just stay in Milwaukee. Because I know what I'm going to get. Well, no, I probably wouldn't get killed by Jeffrey Dahmer, but like that's a risk I'm willing to take. So I'd say like 80s and Milwaukee. And thinking about it, it would be really cool to see like just the city as it was, when I was a little kid. I don't know. But here's what I would do on the off chance that I don't get back, on that, like, say I flip a coin and it's tails and I don't get back, I would collect the hell out of shit that I know for a fact is going to be worth a fuck ton of money today. I'm talking like action figures, comics, Lego sets, consoles, games, all in box, pristine, like hoarder level collecting and I would just sit on that. Multiple copies of stuff so you can sell it and keep one, whatever. Like, man, I mean, it'd be like the collector's version of having the sports almanac from Back to the Future. So that's my answer. History is gross and it's terrifying. So read a book and be comfortable in the era that you live in. And then the last one comes from Big Deal, who says, this is kind of a comment and a question wrapped in one, and I love it. With you being the big Sega kid of the bunch, I wouldn't say that. I think Alan's kind of a bigger Sega kid than I was. But anyways, yes, I am. Well, I guess Brian's definitely not the Sega kid because he actively hates us. Did you ever experience the Sega Channel? I was lucky enough to get it for Christmas the year that it launched, and every month I would pretend to be sick so that I could stay home from school and play the new batch of games that would refresh on the first. It helped introduce me to so many games and genres like RPGs that I would never have experienced otherwise, and it's the big reason why I have so much love and nostalgia for the Genesis as a whole. Big Deal, I had to look this thing up because I assumed, and maybe this was like kind of a revival of it, but I was assuming that it was like the Sega Channel was a thing from like the Xbox or Xbox 360 era, where like Sega published like or had like an online service on Xbox. But this was if you're not aware of what this was, I had to look it up. It was a plug-in to your Sega Genesis that would run through your Time Warner cable system through a coaxial cable. So if that makes no sense to you, you probably didn't grow up in the 90s, and that's fine. And it might not make sense to you even if you did grow up in the 90s, but it came out in 94 was when it launched, and it was discontinued in 98. It was a plug-in. It was like an early version of like a subscription-based like streaming platform for games, which was way ahead of its time. This thing looks so cool. No, if you haven't gathered by now, I did not have one of these, and I think this is so cool. I think by the time I would have been, I guess, old enough. I guess I'm on the younger side of the hosts, as we've established by different birthdays and things that have come and gone here within our first couple of years of podcasting. But I think by the time I was probably old enough to fully appreciate something like this, it had been discontinued already. But this looks so friggin' cool. Yeah, here's like an example that they have on the Wikipedia page is the game Alien Soldier, which wasn't available in North America in cartridge format, but was available on the Sega Channel. So yeah, like you said, there was a lot of stuff on here that you wouldn't have had an opportunity to play unless you had this thing, and that's really cool. Yeah, ahead of its time, I'd say, kind of like the Stadia, rest in peace, the Google Stadia, or something like Apple Arcade, or like Netflix or Amazon has game streaming services now. Yeah, really cool. I wish I had experienced this. You know what? I'm going to tie this into the last question and say that, Hooli, I'm going to travel back to like the 80s or 90s. And I'm going to make sure I try out the Sega Channel with my Time Warner cable subscription in 94. I think that would be pretty fun. So yeah, there we go. Sorry, got to get back to my notes here. Yeah, that was awesome. Great questions, guys. That was a lot of fun. What have I been up to? Man, work has been kind of kicking my ass these last couple weeks. We've made some changes to things, and it's boring to talk about, so I don't want to. That's not what I come on here for. But work's been busy, so I've been kind of trying to relax, watch some movies. We have like a rug here that we got online that's got like an image on it with like VHS spines of horror movies, and so we've been. I was like, we should watch every single movie on this mat because I haven't seen all of them. But I mean, we've watched like Puppet Master now. That was really fun. Silence of the Lambs is on there. That's a rewatch for me. Most of them have been rewatches for me, but it's fun to see some new stuff. So we've been working through that. Watched Hellraiser, watched Evil Dead, which I love. Reanimator, which is one of my favorites of all time. So that's been fun. Just kind of, getting into some old 80s and 90s horror movies. What have I been playing? That's what you're really here for. I finished up Tasmania on the Sega. That was certainly a thing. And I played through most of Escape from Mars, but there's some horse shit towards the end of that game. I mean, I like it, and obviously it's in my collection. I'll still play it, but I'm gonna put that down for now. Probably I'd say probably good. I don't know, 65, 75% through the game. So I've got enough to talk about and form an opinion, but I'm not gonna continue to beat my head against the wall on that one. I picked up Pokemon Silver. If you listen to the most recent episode of Retro Bites, I got the batteries replaced on my Gen 2 Game Boy carts, and so I had been jonesing to play that for so long, and it turns out the original battery was yanked out of there, so there was no way I would have been able to save it anyways, but now I can, and I've been enjoying that. And then I also got started on Final Fantasy IV because I wanted to play an RPG and I wanted to play a good one, and so far I've been having a good time with this one. So more to come, obviously. I continue to play stuff and build a collection. Picked up a copy of Quest 64 recently, and I'm looking forward to this weekend because I'm going to run down to that flea market that's open on the weekends and see if they still have a copy of Ogre Battle 64. That's one of the white whales on my list, and if it's reasonable enough, I think I might grab it. So looking forward to that. But something for you to look forward to is the gentleman's intro to Beloved Rapture. So I'm going to turn it over to Alan.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Beloved Rapture. The fuck is that? I've never heard of it. Beloved Rapture is I don't fucking know. It's an RPG, I think, a retro-inspired one. I mean, it looks like a JRPG. It looks gorgeous. Kind of has shades of Chrono Trigger. I mean, I'd play it. It was developed by Rapture Studio. It was released on the 7th of October 2024. Other than that, I got nothing. Sam, buddy, you're on your own for this one. Let me know if it's any good.
All right. Thanks, Alan. Obviously, not much history on this game because it just came out, and there's actually not a whole lot available on like plot synopsis or development or anything because it's an indie game and it's relatively new. But thanks for trying your best, Alan. I'll take it from here because I got things to say, and you all have things to say also. It is a relatively new game, but we did get some comments from the community which were pretty fun. I'm the only one that's played it, I think. So hopefully I convinced some of you to play it. But let's get to the comments. First comes from Sergeant Humbre, who says, was the Rapture actually beloved or no? And to that, I would say, you'll have to find out. Listen to the review and you'll see. But yeah, I did like it. It was beloved. I beloved it. Chris Copleen from Retro Hangover says, look forward to the episode, and I enjoyed the one you did with Still Loading. Yes, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the hell out of you for giving me the review code for this. That was a fun experience, like I said. I can't say enough about how fun it was. Yeah, and again, I will plug them again. You're probably like, dude, shut up. But go listen to the episode of Still Loading because it was a good episode. It was kind of cool. I'd not talked to Josh before that. We had kind of traded some messages beforehand, but I think we had some pretty good chemistry on the mic. So, yeah, it was a good time talking to Josh over at Still Loading. And the last one comes from Hooli, who says, I am guessing this isn't the same Rapture as the one in BioShock. What a shame. No, it's not a shame because Rapture from BioShock is a fucking terrifying place. It's full of horrible creatures and it's underwater, which is scary as hell. So, no, I don't want to go to Rapture. Maybe Rapture in its prime would be cool. Isn't one of the BioShock games you get to see Rapture in all of its glory? I'd have to see. I'd like to try BioShock again at some point, and maybe I don't know if I tried to be a tryhard and keep the difficulty up, but I didn't enjoy my time with it. But I'd like to try it again at some point because the story was cool and like all the little audio logs and stuff. I'm distracted again. This isn't about BioShock, but you got me all distracted with that Rapture comment. But no, it's not like Rapture. That place is horrible. All right, those are the comments. Thanks, guys. Thanks for commenting on the game, even though you haven't played it. I appreciate it. Those are fun to read. And without further ado, let's get into it. This is Beloved Rapture, released in 2024, October of 2024. So even more recent. It's the last half of 2024. Less than a year old. Developed by Rapture Studios and published by Two Left Thumbs. You can play it on Steam or GOG on the PC. Hopefully it gets ports over to other consoles later on. Physical release for Switch would be cool. I'd grab that up. But anywho, let's start the show. Thanks everyone for listening. Okay, if you couldn't tell by the intro, we will be talking about Beloved Rapture this week, an indie RPG that was released in 2024, which I'm sure I've mentioned in the introduction, but in case I didn't and I forgot, it was developed by Rapture Studios, published by Two Left Thumbs, and currently is available to play on Windows or Steam. This was something I didn't expect. Just real quick backstory is that Chris over at Retro Hangover had contacted me and said, "Hey, do you want a review copy of this RPG?" And I was like, "Sure." And it was for Still Loading. So if this is going to come out after Still Loading, since I owe it to Josh and Chris for the review copy and for giving me the opportunity to go chat with Josh about this game. So go listen to that one because that Josh and I get a lot more in depth and there's a bit more of a back and forth. But this is a solo episode for me for the bank here at Retrotopia. So it's just going to be me flying solo this week if you don't know already. This is an indie RPG that was heavily inspired by the 16-bit era JRPGs of the Super Nintendo era. It's got really deep story, a lot of exploration. Very linear, but still managed to pack in a lot of exploration. Some good leveling and stat building. Your standard RPG fare. Beautiful art style and soundtrack. I could still now I can hear the battle theme in my head. It's got a good banger of a battle theme, which I think JRPGs or just like turn-based RPGs in this style really should have a good banging battle theme. The story, I'll get into some story elements without spoiling anything. Over at Still Loading, we did throw up a spoiler wall and talk some spoiler stuff, but really if you're interested in this game and want to play it, I'd want to sway you in that direction without spoiling anything that happens. You start as Johan, who is the main character and party member pretty much throughout the game. And he is a young man whose village is attacked by a group called the Aeons. This isn't too much of a spoiler because it happens kind of right away, but you find out one of the Aeons is Johan's father, who is not in the picture. And then obviously Johan's village is destroyed, so he has to leave, and that's kind of your call to adventure. So Johan, I think if I recall, the main object or the kind of the impetus for Johan to strike out is that he wants to notify the palace, the royal palace, that this is happening, that the Aeons are are attacking villages, and so he's kind of on a quest to meet with the king and kind of see if there's anything they can do. On your quest, you meet up with Aiden, who is I think he's a noble's son, a disgraced noble, I believe, but he's kind of an all around fighter and magic user, kind of like a blue mage, I guess, where it's like they're kind of good all around. Is it Final Fantasy 9 that has a 10? 10 as the blue mage that kind of sucks, but you get the picture. Like he's good with magic, and he's good with a sword, but he's kind of a jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. But he's a good one to have in your party, because his moves are pretty good. We'll get into like the special moves that they have, and then you also get Krista, and Aiden and Krista are really the main two that are in your party for the rest of the game. Krista's the magic user and the healer. So much so to the point that she doesn't even have an attack. She doesn't attack with her weapon like, in Final Fantasy 7, like Aerith will attack with her staff or whatever. It doesn't do a lot of damage, but at least it gives her something to do when she's not healing or using magic. So these are your mains. Others joining your party are Lance and Karuka, but they join later for story reasons, so I won't get too into that. Johann progresses through the game looking for the Aeons so he can stop them. I think he does want to confront the Aeons also as part of what's going on. You meet other characters along the way, travel through the wilderness. There's a really cool segment where you actually get to the capital, which is called Alexandria, and there's like a castle town that's really, really detailed that you run around in, and there's some side quests and stuff. There's underground caves, sewers, castles, islands, all kinds of different terrain. Not a ton of varied terrain because it is very kind of self-contained to this kingdom, and not a lot of deviation from the path, but still pretty cool. If there's any other story elements, I guess there's very strong philosophical themes. LGBTQ themes, because the characters are gay, which is pretty cool. I don't think that's a spoiler, but Johann, you can see throughout the game, has varying levels of affection for the men that he's close to, and so that becomes one of the themes. Then there's kind of mystical and religious themes that not specific to anything real world on Earth or anything, but just kind of some stuff, like the Aeons are kind of these cult fanatics and stuff. And so, that's kind of cool too, but really cool all overall. A lot of different things going on in the story that usually story is not really something that I cling to as super important. Usually it's just like, if you need a story, sure, it's a vehicle for me to be playing this game that I enjoy and progressing through it. But this one I was really kind of hooked into what was going on, and the cutscenes were interesting too. So that I would say that all encapsulating the story that gets my approval. I appreciated the story very much. Let's see. Let's move on to. There's a lot I have to say about gameplay because it is a JRPG, so a lot of the elements are familiar, but there's some unique stuff here that they try to do that I think works. Some of it works, and some of it the game is difficult. We'll get into that, but I'll let you know my thoughts on some of the mechanics of the game. I guess the game was made using RPG Maker 2003. Which is an engine for developers to create RPGs like this. I know that there's like a whole wiki page for RPG Maker 03, and so I know that there are other games that are made using this engine, which is pretty cool. So it's got like that really classic look and feel. Think Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy 4, 6, Super Nintendo era RPGs. The gameplay, the battles are turn-based, but they are on a metered system, kind of like an active time battle system like you get with Chrono Trigger or Final Fantasy VII. Once your meter fills up, then your character is able to choose an action. All can attack and do magic, except for Krista, and then they can all use items too. Something I thought was cool that was a little different than, say like a limit break or something, was that you could attack or do magic. So any sort of active type of action that's not using an item or defending, if you do that 3 turns, not necessarily in a row, but just the third time that you attack or do magic, you can trigger a Relica, which is a special ability, and it costs MP to do it. So you do have to be kind of careful and strategic about when you use it. But some of those moves, especially when you start upgrading your characters and their loadouts and stuff, get pretty powerful. Krista's was always great because she could heal the party, and I think her holy damage or her holy magic does quite a bit of damage to certain enemies. So there's 2 difficulties, which is nice. I was going to say Relica and magic abilities are tied to the weapon level, which we'll get into, because there's ways that you can upgrade your magic and weapons, which is kind of a little bit unique. I mean, it obviously borrows, but I think it does something that's kind of unique, I guess, that you don't see too often in RPGs. Difficulty modes, classic and story. It's a tough one. So honestly, if you're there for the story and you just kind of want to play through the game and you don't want it to be too difficult, take story mode. Honestly, no shame in that, because actually I didn't finish it, which we'll get into later, but I did get up to the very final boss. But I played it on classic, and there was plenty tough. There were some spots, plenty of spots where it was pretty touch and go, especially in the early going. I thought the game actually got easier as you went along and added members to your party. And then there's when going back to the battle system there, when you start the game, you can choose between active and wait. I chose active because I thought it would be then like the ATB and kind of add some challenge to it, because you have to select your moves. You have to be ready. You kind of have to pay attention a little bit more than kind of the mash A approach to fighting turn-based battles sometimes. So I wanted a little bit more challenge to it, but I think actually kind of made things more difficult for me at certain points, because it seemed like when you were into the menu, like say you chose to attack or you were going to do magic or something like that, when you're in those menus, choosing your spell or selecting your opponent or whatever, then it would kind of pause. But in between, like if you had to back out or you hit the wrong thing and you went to needed to move around the menu a little bit, then I think that's where the timer kind of quote unquote starts again, and the enemy would attack while you were trying to decide. And sometimes, I don't know if this was a glitch in the game, but sometimes I would select something and then the character just like wouldn't do it. So I don't know if that was just because some sort of bug in the programming or something where when we were in the active mode, just things got difficult for weird reasons, and sometimes I would get kind of stuck in the menus, where I think if I had chosen wait, that wouldn't have been as big of a problem. Leveling, I want to talk about that, because the characters will level up relatively frequently based on gaining experience points in battle, and sometimes, which was kind of cool, you get experience points for progressing through various puzzles in the dungeons. When you pass through a room after completing a dungeon or a puzzle or something, it would flash on the screen that you got, I don't know, like 50 experience points or something. Characters have different strengths and weaknesses in their stats, as you would imagine. The stats go up with each level, but just kind of like in like a Paper Mario game, you get it's not as impactful as in Paper Mario, but you do get to 4 bonus points that you can allocate to any stat that you want. And I felt that my characters were taking a lot of damage, and so I was pumping up constantly like defense and maybe magic points. Apparently you do get a 5th additional stat boost. If you allocate all 4 of your bonus points to one stat, it gives you a 5th one. So I think what I should have done I will play this game again at some point, but I think what I would do next time is allocate more. Always allocate all of your points so that you get that bonus point. But then I think I would pump more into speed than I did last time. Usually I was focused on defense because I was just getting lit up for certain battles, and yeah, I was hoping that I could pump myself up enough to mitigate some of the damage. But it always seems like, and that might be a criticism, but it kind of seems like the game always stays like just a little bit ahead of you due to the scaling. But yeah, then it does scale a little bit, I think. Just keep the difficulty consistent throughout. Let's see. There's not a lot of grinding. This is another game where you can see enemies on the screen, which I know is a big plus, especially for some of the most popular RPGs of all time do this. Random encounters don't really occur unless you're ambushed, which happens in other games. Like there's games where you can see the enemies on the screen, like Chrono Trigger or Earthbound or whatever, but there are times when there are quote unquote random encounters where you're ambushed, and so that does happen. But there's not really opportunities to grind. But I didn't really have any problem with it. Usually I would, if I was in an area though, I would try to fight as many battles as I could. So I guess that was, in that way, I kind of I did some grinding a little bit, but it's not like you go to the area outside town and just like wander around and fight until you level up. So that's good. It kind of keeps the game moving. Weapons can be leveled up to 4 times. I think the highest level is 5. Each increased level unlocks a new Relica ability, which is important, and increases the weapon's own stat attributes to the point where they like double in some cases. So it was really, really worthwhile to upgrade the weapons and to choose wisely whose weapons you were upgrading. Weapons are upgraded by finding these items called ethereal shards. And so basically you pay usually money in ethereal to upgrade your weapons. And the ethereal is relatively rare. You do get it from certain battles. I think sometimes like important enemies will drop them. Otherwise, if you kind of explore around dungeons and caves on the open world and stuff like that, it's not an open world, out in like the forest areas, I guess. If you really scour and look around, you can find a lot of items, including these ethereal shards, and they kind of make it so that if you do go above and beyond and explore every nook and cranny, you'll find plenty and be able to upgrade your weapons quite a bit. Let's see. You have to do this at blacksmiths. So there's blacksmiths at various points. Whenever there's a town or like an encampment or something, there might be a blacksmith that you can upgrade your weapons at. Magic spells can be upgraded too, and sometimes you're kind of competing. Your ethereal shard stock, your upgrades will be competing for your ethereal shards because your magic spells, in addition to using these rune tablets that you find that are specific to certain elements, sometimes you need other items too, and that does include ethereal shards sometimes, which was kind of an irritant. Like I wish that some of those items would be exclusive to weapons or magic, but they did. I guess that is part of the difficulty, is that the game does make you choose and really consider when you have enough items and ethereal and money to upgrade something. I really was like going back and forth and like trying to weigh my pros and cons because the items are scarce for sure. I talked a little bit about the overworld with the extra exploration and puzzles and stuff. So the game doesn't have an open world area. So between towns, you're not walking in big open empty spaces or anything. And there's no, airship or anything. It's just point A to point B. You usually have a map you have to buy in each new area. But it's pretty much like kind of forested areas for the most part. some kind of mountainous rocky spots or like riverlands. So it's pretty basic forested terrain and not a lot of, there's some islands at the end, which are kind of cool, but basically all of it's kind of hard to describe, but like, because I have not really played a game too much like this, but it is very much along a set path, but there's plenty of exploration to do within that path, if that makes any sense. So you have this big kind of wide open map of an area you can explore. It does mark your objectives on the map, which is cool. So you never are unsure of where to go. Although getting there can be difficult sometimes because you have to kind of find your way. You know, there's parts of the path that are blocked or whatever. If you want to avoid some encounters with some enemies, you might have to go around. But then also there's like a lot of, like I said, caves and you know, I don't know, tombs, like different things that you can go into. And sometimes there's a lot to do in those areas, and sometimes it's just like a chest. Sometimes there's a puzzle to solve or a battle to fight, and then you can take an extra item. But this is the way that you get a lot of your items for upgrades, so it's worth exploring everywhere. Let's see. Yeah, this game does not have a system where you can heal very frequently, which is another interesting kind of facet for me on playing this versus kind of a more traditional JRPG. You know, usually you're used to being able to go to a town and either heal at like a chapel or an inn or something like that. There were some inns, but I think you could really still only use them once. And then there are these goddess statues that are kind of scattered throughout. And if you interact with any of those on the open map, they'll heal you in full. So all of your hit points and magic points. Other than that, you kind of have to rely on healing items, which are generous because the potions that you get, the one heals, I think 40%, which is significant. And then the high potion or whatever heals 70%. And then of course there's items that heal your whole party. There's items that fill your magic points. There's all kinds of stuff like that. So those are around and relatively plentiful. And so I think the idea is it's almost like resource management on top of, you know, your kind of, you know, traditional JRPG, but also with this added element of like item management, you know, making sure that you're not overhealing or just healing at the right times. Like if you could roll into a battle without healing, might be useful because you can heal in battle and then also save your items for, you know, when you really need them later on. This was a good game to play for someone like me who uses items sparingly because you want to save them until the end of the game, like your elixirs and all the kind of high powered potions and stuff like that. I already talked about no random encounters. That was cool. Like there are a few exceptions, obviously, of, you know, getting ambushed and stuff like that, but I don't consider that random encounter. That's just part of the game. Though the encounters that they do give you are like each battle should be taken seriously, basically. You know, even if it's like, oh, there's just a bat on the screen or something, you engage with it, and then there might be 4 bats that you're fighting, and you might only have 1 or 2 members in your party, and those bats are fast, and they're attacking frequently, and they're poisoning you, and they're putting you to sleep, and doing all kinds of bullshit. And it's like, there was definitely like a feeling that I would get like dread going into an upcoming, you know, I'd see a battle on the screen and be like, shit. Like at any point you can fully expect that you might lose a battle that you're about to get in, especially if you either kind of, I don't know, like to use a baseball analogy, like if you get behind in the count, or if you know, like if an enemy is just kind of like getting under your guard at the right time, or you're just not fast enough in the menus, or you make a mistake or something like that. It really, especially with the active system that I was using, I was getting cooked in a couple of these battles that were like seemingly kind of innocuous little battles. They would come in and surprise me, like real David and Goliath situation, I guess. Especially when you're talking about like these like little mushrooms in the forest were particularly nasty, and it's just like, did I really just get killed by like some basic looking monster? But yeah, it's definitely possible. And the enemies do a lot of damage. That's why I was saying, like, I was trying to focus on upping my defense every time, and it just like, due to the scaling, I think that just really seemed like they kept one step ahead of you every time. Yeah, I talked about the limited opportunities to heal. It really is a hindrance like that. The limited opportunities to heal and the difficulty of the battles and the necessity for resource management really contributed to the difficulty of this game. I thought this game was tough, and it took me a while to kind of get the hang of it. And like I said, like, I don't know if it was a combination of me just finally, like, the game fully kind of clicking with me and me fully learning, the game, or what the game was wanting me to do, or what strategies work best in the battles, or just gaining more characters as you go through the game. Like, you don't start with, another pretty good magic user and swordsman and healer. You have to find them, in the first dungeon, and I think there's a boss battle that you have to fight alone, and it's just like, holy shit. Like, I died a couple times just on the way to the first cave that I was supposed to go in, and I was like, what the hell? Like, this is not going to be sustainable for me. I really hope that I can finish this game out, but eventually you do get the hang of it. And yeah, again, if you are interested in playing this game, I would say definitely pick that weight battle system. Unless they fixed it. I know that they are the developer is actually actively making changes and updates and stuff, which we'll get into later, in a way that was very important for whether or not I actually finished the game. But I don't know if any of these other kind of issues that I noticed would get worked out, but it's possible. Like, it's possible that the version that you download, if you were to play this today versus me playing it a few months ago, would maybe there'd be some improvements by then. But still definitely worthwhile. And then again, if it's too difficult, I think you can change it down to story mode, which I actually should have done to finish it, but that's neither here nor there. Graphics are amazing. They're incredible. The game can I think graphically go toe to toe with some of the best, like pixel graphic or 2D HD. I mean, it's not 2D HD with like the shadows and stuff that you get from like a Triangle Strategy or Octopath Traveler or something like that. So it's not quite that high fidelity, but it is very colorful, and graphics work really, really well. And all the sprites like look really, I don't know, like they're well drawn, or I don't know how you would, well rendered. Because there's like more highly detailed versions of them, and then obviously their little pixel version, but they look really, really good. And even the little pixelated versions, like they'll emote, like, so they'll like laugh and stuff, or they'll, like their facial expressions will change a little bit that you can kind of see. Think of it like Chrono Trigger is a great example of that. That's a game where the sprites do like just incredible stuff that really adds to the impact of the dialogue. I would say the game is really, really and this is another, sorry, to go back to the graphics, I forgot one thing I was going to mention. It's like, if you think about the way that your old games used to look, like the perception of what you think they used to look like, this is a prime example of like, oh, you're playing this, you'd say like, oh, this is exactly what Final Fantasy 2 looked like on my Super Nintendo. And you go back and play it, of course it doesn't. Like, the graphics have improved since then, and our ability, they're displayed in HD and full color and whatever LCD liquid crystal awesomeness. But like, this is what you think your games used to look like. You know, this is like the memory that's been imprinted. So when you look at like something that's been punched up for HD, it definitely has that feel to it. A good example that I had was like Turtles in Time versus Shredder's Revenge. You know, like if you were to think of Turtles in Time, you're like, that game looks awesome, and it does. But I mean, it definitely looks like a game that was made at the time. Whereas, you know, you look at Shredder's Revenge and you think, oh, this is what I think Turtles in Time used to look like, but it is much sharper. So that's kind of the vibe I get from the graphics. Sorry, that was really roundabout way to say that, but hopefully I got there. The game, like I said, I did enjoy the story, but the game can be very dialogue heavy in parts. So where you're getting through something and then you fight a boss, or you fight a an important battle or something like that, and your characters will have some dialogue afterwards. There is a lot of dialogue. But the cool thing with the graphics though is that the main characters, the most important characters, have images of their they're not avatar, but like just the picture of themselves that pops up next to the text box, and those pictures will emote too. So those will change depending on what the character is wearing, or what they're feeling, that sort of thing. Really cool. But those dialogue sequences and lengthy dialogue, sometimes I usually get bored of that. But I think with the graphics, with the writing of the story, like the way the story was going, the fact that you saw the characters pop up in the corner of the screen, there was usually just something to keep me engaged. And it wasn't all story, some of it that helped, I think, was just the fact that I was looking at something that was really appealing to the eye. Let's see. Yeah, this is more about the graphics, but just while I'm on the topic of dialogue, those low points of, the dialogue, I wouldn't call it low points, but dialogue kind of was a nice, after a particularly intense battle or something I'd been working on for a while. And, I did get killed quite a bit in some of these boss fights. So having these intense moments counterbalanced by, plenty of good story was kind of a nice counterpoint, especially with such a difficult game. The battle theme. Oh, sorry, I skipped on into music. I'd say just one final note on the graphics. I think it stacks up against, some of the best indie games, or the ones that we, know and love the most, like Messenger, Sea of Stars, Stardew Valley. Like in terms of the pixel graphics, it stacks up against any of those, I would say. Now, where I skipped to in my notes, music and sound effects. They're great. Nothing short of just spectacular. There's nothing annoying or grating in the sound effects department. Like all the sounds are, sorry, getting dry throat here. All the weapons and magic sounded great. Moving through the menu screens did sound a lot like Final Fantasy. There's that little like kind of ping sound that it makes when you scroll through item options. So yeah, everything sounded good, appropriate, just kind of up-res, great, nostalgic sounding RPG sounds. Music is excellent. It either fits the mood that the game is trying to convey very well, and then also there's some times where there's no music, which is cool. So again, just kind of like how the periods of intensity are countered by periods of heavy storytelling and dialogue. There's also like music, really intense music, and then absence of music sometimes, which I thought was also pretty important. They use that to great effect. Like when you're exploring beaches, I made a special note of this because towards the end you're in these island chains, and when you're on the beach, you're just hearing like really pleasing ocean sounds, which is kind of cool. Yeah, the battle theme is great. It gets stuck in my head. I can hear it now. I think that's a sign of good game music, I think, is when the battle themes or just any theme in general get stuck in your head and you're kind of like not mad about it. Like obviously things can get stuck in your head because it's like intrusive thoughts when you like you have something that gets stuck in your head because it annoys you. But this got stuck in my head, and I'm just like, oh yeah, there's that battle music again. That sounds pretty fucking cool. Yeah, it's great. So I don't know if I think there might be a soundtrack available on Steam. I know there's ways that you can get like different sound bites and artwork and stuff that you can get on your Steam account. I definitely suggest it or recommend it. I really hope that actually they put it on Spotify, just like they do with, most games now have their soundtracks up on Spotify or Apple Music. Hold on, I'm going to take a drink of water here. Man, it is tough to speak for, gosh, this is a side note, total tangent, but I'm reading this book about Abraham Lincoln and his campaign for president back in the 1860s, 50s and 60s. And it's like, holy shit, these guys that and water wasn't as clean as it is now back then, mind you. Like, they talk about these speeches where they speak for like 3 or 4 hours straight and then like faint afterwards. It's like, good Lord, I don't understand how you could do that. But anyways, I was just thinking, like, what are you drinking? Like, you don't have this like great, nice sparkling water like I have for my throat. You probably have like toilet water and mead. I don't know. Ugh. Okay. Sorry. That was a fun aside. Let's get into some of the other aspects of the game. I think we're going to kind of start to get into some of my more specific thoughts, although I have sprinkled them throughout. To let the cat out of the bag. I think this is a great game. I had a lot of fun with it. While I got off to a bit of a slow start, I think I had to kind of get used to the gameplay style, but I never, I found myself enjoying the game more and more as I progressed, and I would get kind of locked in where it was like, man, I should probably go to bed, but here it is on my Steam Deck, and I got my pillows, got the dogs, got, everything's where it should be. I'm playing fucking beloved Rapture with my Steam Deck. Everything is right in the world. But the game got easier as I went to where, battles that would have really given me some problems early on, were, easier to get through because you have more party members and it opens up more strategies and gives you, I just found myself enjoying it way more once I got all of my party members in. So interesting. This is going to be all over the place. These are kind of like my random bullet point thoughts to kind of close out here. This game was kickstarted, which I thought was really interesting. So it has a pretty good community around it because obviously like the developers had to raise the funds, and then the folks that kickstarted it, obviously contribute, and then, are kept appraised of what's going on. So they have a Discord community, which is pretty cool. Josh from Still Loading was actually in the Discord community, and something that I'll get into. I don't even know if I put it in my notes. Oh, no. It's right here. Yeah, there were some things that I was like, oh my gosh, is this game for real right now? Like, what's going on? And I just, shoot Josh a message where I was at. He's like, oh, let me check with the devs, which was kind of interesting. Like, if you're having difficulty in the game, you like usually, we play retro stuff mostly. So it's like you look up a game FAQ or a YouTube video or something. And so this time it was just like, let me check with the devs. Pretty cool. I did find that there were some bugs and kind of glitchy things that, being kind of an early player of the game. Yeah, I think obviously this is, an earlier version, you can patch things out or, update things and make things run a little smoother, especially in the modern day where people are playing, just directly downloading games for the most part. I would be interested to see if something like this ever gets a physical release, because you'd really have to make sure that all the issues are kind of cleaned up, because I guess no, even that's not the case, because even if you get a cartridge, you can get patches and stuff. But I don't know, you'd still want to make sure that it's playable out of the box, right? I don't know. I'm just speculating. I did find sometimes that the game would crash. I don't know if it's because doesn't run as smooth on the Steam Deck or what. I thought it ran fine, but the crashes were a little annoying. I just learned quickly between the kind of crazy difficulty at times, or just like the trouble I had with certain battles. Like I just learned, and you can save anywhere, which is awesome. That isn't something I mentioned back in the gameplay section, but you can save even if you can't heal very much. You can definitely save often, which I would suggest. But I was saving enough by that point that by the time I got to some crashes, with the exception of one time in particular, it was kind of annoying because I had to go back through a bunch of dialogue. I didn't find it to be too much of a problem because I just booted back up, back to my last save. I did notice sometimes the music got stuck and would kind of like skip or click. You'd get that like kind of a weird clicking noise. And I don't know. And this kind of makes me think that hopefully the lack of music sometimes isn't just that there's supposed to be music playing and there wasn't, because I actually thought that sometimes when the music wasn't playing, it worked really well. But, sometimes the sound would kind of have some trouble. And then I mentioned this before, but there was kind of what I thought was a glitch in the active battle, where turns were sometimes skipped after I would input something, especially for stuff like magic, or like sometimes I think like they wouldn't do the Relica when I asked them to, and that really sucks because there were times when I would have Krista like heal the party and it would just kind of completely pass over. It would allow me to select it obviously and get me to the next, either waiting or choosing in the next menu, and then Krista would just do nothing. It's just like, what the fuck? I really needed that heal. So it was like waiting an extra turn for healing is not good, especially if you need it. Then you're going to have to start digging into your items if someone, KOs or something like that. So that wasn't always great. And that made some of the more difficult battles sometimes even worse. And it could be kind of difficult to navigate the menu. Sometimes I found they were kind of jumping all over the place. So I don't know if that was just a user error or if that's kind of a legit concern. But again, these are all things that I think as time goes on and as newer, updated versions go out there, patches and stuff, I think that this could all be cleaned up. Now we get to kind of a funny story, because I get to the final boss, and there is a spot, there's kind of a point of no return where you rest up and then you're going to go into, gosh, I don't know if it's like a volcano or some sort of area. It's really, I can't quite remember exactly what it is, but you're in this like kind of cosmic looking, it's like Final Fantasy when you're very earthbound for most of the game, and all of a sudden like you fight this final monster and you're in some sort of like freaking outer space nether realm shit where you're just like standing on a giant slab of rock that's like floating in the cosmos. That's kind of what the final area looks like. But basically, like, well before you get into that, there is a point, I think, where they say like, okay, now you can't come back. If you go forward, you can't come back anymore, and make sure that you're all your party is all ready to go. That's where I would suggest definitely just popping another save file on there, just in case you want to make any changes before you go in there. So I would suggest that, but I didn't do that because I was like, at that point most of the battles were getting pretty easy. Like I was getting into a groove where my characters were doing good amounts of damage. They were quick. I had kind of a good strategy going, to build up the relicas and when to use them and, when to heal and stuff. So final boss I wasn't too worried about until I got there. It was way, way, way too hard. And I don't say this as someone who, like, if I complain that something is hard, it doesn't mean that I haven't tried a few times. Like, I think that people can probably, if you're harshly critical of those around you, or you're try hard with your video games, I can see people saying, well, you just get good, and then you'll beat it. I don't think there was a way to beat this, if I'm being quite honest. Just the way that it was set up. So I would get into the battle. I've got 4 characters. They're all ready to go. And I definitely had a plan in my head for what I wanted my first few moves to be. And this thing, it's like a giant creature of some sort. It's got, like a center body and 2 arms, which is pretty common for like a final boss or like a big boss in a turn-based, like a JRPG where you got to attack the arms, or like one arm does something and the other arm does something else, and everything's got wonky, different levels of hit points and all that stuff. So it's your standard. It's not standard. I don't want to call it that, but it's something you see. It's kind of a trope, right? That's what you see at the end. What you can expect to see at the end of a boss battle, or at the end of a JRPG is a boss battle like this. Man, it did some sort of spell that reduced my entire party's hit points down to 1. And then while it didn't do any more direct damage other than that, sometimes it had a lot of magic that kind of seemed focused on just reducing your health down, but not actually killing you. But then sometimes the arms would come through and like smack you. And that was a problem, because that would do enough damage to kill you. Even if your hit points weren't just at 1, it would do a significant amount of damage. But anyways, like it was doing like 2 or 3 different attacks, like even before I got my first one off. And so I was like, there's something is wrong with this. Like this doesn't seem right. Because when I asked around and asked Josh and stuff, I was like, are you having problems with this? He said, no, I beat it. I didn't have any problems with the final boss. It wasn't memorable. And I was like, well, this boss is handing me my ass like crazy. So I think, again, this was kind of the beauty part of playing this new RPG with such a fan base, or such kind of a following right now, is Josh jumped into that Discord and asked the dev, and he's sure as shit. Yeah. I think they had gotten some feedback that people thought the boss was too easy. So they made some changes, and man, it was fucking intense. Like I'm not kidding. There were times when I would be like, all right, I know I need to do something different. So I'd kind of like reformulate my strategy. I'm like, all right, I'm going to load up my save file. I'm going to do it again. And despite my best efforts, like depending on the combination of moves that this thing used before I even got my chance to do one move, sometimes it would kill half my party. Like it would reduce them to 1 hit point, and then like both arms would attack, and then all of a sudden, like before the battle even really gets started, I'm down to 2 party members that each have 1 hit point. So there's something was over, basically it was overbalanced in the other direction. So hopefully, like I said, and this kind of is coming off negative, and I don't mean it to. I really did enjoy this game. And I really have high level of confidence in the developers that if they're listening to people and they have this Discord community, that they can really like take this advice and feedback and create the very best game that they can. So I couldn't beat it, but I don't really hold it against the game, because the game is new. If this had been like an established, an old game that, I was playing and all of a sudden there was a difficulty spike like this and I just couldn't beat it. Like, to be honest, I'm not even going to put in the reps to do that, because at that point, to me, I'm just wasting my time. But this, I really felt like it was just, like I said, yeah, overbalanced in the other direction. And I think I would definitely give this game another shot again. I do plan to play this again in the future, because I did enjoy it that much. I don't know. All in all, I think, if you like 16-bit JRPGs, if you like story and... Okay, sorry for that. I might have to cut a little bit out, because I had to pause for a second, because I'm home alone and it sounded like my TV turned on by itself, but it really freaked the fuck out of me. But it was Benji going downstairs to lay on the couch and he hit the remote. So where was I? Yeah, I think I was getting ready to wrap this up. So Sorry if thanks for bearing with me with my rambling about this game and then me getting freaked out about my TV being on. Yeah, we'll go back to this. I'm not cutting any of this. This is why you're here. This is a very charming throwback 16-bit JRPG, and I call it JRPG just because it's the genre, not because it's actually from Japan. It's got really deep story, deep character development, really good story. If you're a fan of JRPGs and you like a challenge, especially, I would consider picking this up. There's a bit of a difficulty curve, like I said, with getting started. It can kind of take a while to get the hang of things. But, once you really get rolling and adding characters to your party and progressing and, making your upgrades and stuff, the game's style, getting used to the game style really makes things easier as you go on. So it's definitely rewards just kind of hanging with it for a while as you learn. I'd say it's a great length too. Like, you talk about some of these games that are, you sink like 80, 100 hours into, and this is a nice compact 25-hour. It took me 25 hours. So like 24-hour RPG, depending on how quickly you play or how much you want to explore. Side quests were fun, and some of the extra exploration. I didn't even do all of it. There's like fishing, which we didn't even talk about. I guess there is one way to grind in the game, and that's with fishing. You can catch fish and then you can sell them. I don't really think they're used for anything else, like cooking or anything. There's a fisherman at one point in the game that will pay you double for your fish. So that's a really good way to, if you're okay with fishing games in general, or you like this one, it's kind of a cool way. If you want to spend some extra time gathering money, can be helpful in making sure that you have all the best weapons and not weapons. Well, yeah, weapons, because you do have to pay money to upgrade them, but they each have the same weapon throughout the game. You just upgrade it. What you can change in the loadout is armor and different items, like stuff that you can wear in your hands and stuff like that. So there's like stuff that protects against ice or fire, or pretty standard stuff. But those are things that you have to spend money on, and if you're already competing, if your budget is tight because you're trying to buy potions and stuff too, it can be helpful to catch some fish and sell them. Anyways, that's a really weird place to talk about the fishing mini game. I'm trying to wrap up, but I did think of that and wanted to mention it. 25 hours is what I spent on it. I didn't finish it, which we talked about. Getting stuck on that last boss sucked, but it is what it is. There really isn't that much after. I did look up someone's Let's Play that they posted on YouTube, and it's funny because it's like I looked at that boss and I was like, okay, yes, that is much different than my experience right now. I feel vindicated. But yeah, they finished it, and then there's it doesn't really waste your time afterwards. It's like, okay, here's the end, and it's not like a big long drawn out thing. So I actually appreciate that too, because sometimes, like, especially when you're finishing a game, you're probably if you're anything like me, you're probably like staying up late and like pressing through just to finish it because you're like so close to finishing it, and then there's like an hour worth of cutscenes at the end, and you're like, come on. But yeah, this didn't have that, and I really appreciated it. I have nothing else to say. This is a great game. I would recommend playing it. I'm really, really happy that I got the opportunity to give it a try. And I implore you all, if you're interested in indie games or RPGs in general, that this is a fun one if you're looking for something different to play, especially if you have access to play on PC or on Steam somehow. Apparently it works really well in computer mode too, like just on Steam. That's how Josh played it when we were talking on Still Loading. I played it on my Steam Deck and it worked. It's not verified for Steam, so it doesn't have that little checkbox with the little green check mark if you're a Steam user. But it does play just fine. I'd give it my full-hearted Retrotopia recommendation. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think it's a really charming RPG and a lot of fun, great difficulty, perfect length, length of time spent playing the game, great story, really cool themes, really great artwork and music, all around a really great time. So 8.5 out of 10. And that's going to do it for our review of Beloved Rapture, or my rather, since this is a solo episode. If you want to hear more in-depth talk about Beloved Rapture, you should go check out the episode that I guested on Still Loading with Josh. That is the Still Loading podcast. That was a lot of fun. We went on for like probably 2 hours. So if you really want to hear more about it, that's a great place to do it. And give Josh a follow. He's a good guy. And also thanks to Chris from Retro Hangover for giving me the opportunity to play this. He had those review copies, and that was really cool of him. So thanks, Chris. This was a great game and led to a couple of good podcast episodes. Maybe not this one. The Still Loading one is good. This one's just kind of, But I hope you all enjoyed it. I'm not sure what's going to be on for next week since this is going in the bank for a while until such a time when we need it. But until next time, you keep playing those video games until your eyes bleed. Bye.